So from today onwards, we are going to start object-oriented programming concepts. Object-oriented programming. So at the beginning session, I've shown you like what is an object-oriented programming language. If any language supports object-oriented programming concepts, you can call it as a object-oriented programming language. So what are those concepts? There are mainly 6 concepts are there. We call it as a object-oriented programming concepts. So what are those concepts? The first concept is a class, and then object, then polymorphism, encapsulation, inheritance, data abstraction. So these are all called object-oriented programming concepts. If any language supports all those features, we call it as a object-oriented programming language. Object-oriented programming languages. But some languages doesn't support any of these concepts, and some language will support only class and object. It doesn't support any other things. But Java is supported all the concepts. So it is purely object-oriented programming language. Okay. So as part of today's session, first let us try to understand what is class and object. So these are the two fundamental entities which we need to understand first. And once you understand class and object, then only we will be able to understand the rest of the concepts, because these are the first basic concepts which we have to understand from object-oriented programming concepts. And these are the foundation. These are the base for all other concepts. So today we will focus more on class and object. And also I will discuss something about methods. Class contains methods. Okay, so what is the first class? What is a class? General definition. A class is collection of attribute and behavior. This is a simple definition of the class. A class is a collection of attributes and behavior. Class is a collection of attributes and behavior. Simple meaning is a category or a group. We call it as a class. For example, let's say I'm taking some example here. Let's say animal. So animal is just a name which we have given to particular group, right? But that's not physical. But what are the physical entities here? Is a dog is a physical, elephant is a physical, horse is a physical. These are all physical. But all of them comes under what? One group, that is animal. So that is called class. And the class is a collection of attributes and behavior. That means these animals are having a similar type of attribute, similar type of behavior. So we call them as one group, one category. That is called class. Simple. Okay, for example, let's take another one. And there are some people, or there are some students are studying in the class. Let's say every student, let's say Kim, David, Scott, these are students. They're studying in a class. And every student is having their IDs, every student is having their name, grade, and so on. But all comes under what? Student category. Student is a class, and these are all called objects. And animal is a class, and these are all called objects of animal. These are all our objects of student class. Okay, for example, let's take an organization. In organization, there are so many employees are working. And if I look at here, every employee is having their own data, like employee ID, employee name, salary, all these things. And John, Smith, Mary. So these are all different employees working in an organization, but they are all belongs to one group or one category, that is employee. So employee is a class, and these are all objects of employee class. So simply, what is class? Class is a collection of attributes and behavior. Attributes in the sense what? Every animal is having their own attribute. It means color, height. Okay, they're all attributes. Behavior means the way of eating, the way of running, the way of sleeping. All these comes under behavior. So these are all comes under one category, animal. These are all comes under one category, student. So these are all comes under one category, which is employee. So if I look at here, animal, student, employee, these are all classes, category name. but they are not physical. So there is no physical existence of animal, student, or they are just a name we have given to the particular group based upon attributes and behavior, right? Similarly, student is just a name we have given to the particular group of people. Employee is just a name we have given to particular group of people, who are working in company. But they are not exactly physical. They are not physical. But whatever comes under that particular group, they are physical, right? These are physical. Every physical entity is having their own attributes and behavior. But the attributes can be different, behavior can be different, but almost a similar type of attribute, similar type of behavior they will have. So based on this understanding, we will know exactly what is class. Class is just a virtual entity. There is no physical entity. So this is a simple virtual entity. There's no, this is not a physical entity. It's just a name which we have given to a particular group. That's it. That's called class. Okay. In other words, we can simply understand it is a blueprint. It's a class is a plan, or it's a blueprint. It's a blueprint. What does that mean? For example, let's say before constructing a house, so we will have one plan, right? So we'll have one structural plan. So based on that plan, we can construct house. For example, let's say there is a plan like this, and based on this blueprint or plan, we can construct real houses. We can construct n number of real houses. And what is this plan is just a blueprint. But based on this plan, based on the blueprint, we can construct multiple houses. So these are all different objects of one single class. This is a class. So in other words, we can say a class is a blueprint. A class is a plan, or it's a blueprint. Based on that, we can construct multiple houses. Same thing, based on the class, we can create multiple objects. So one class can have multiple objects. We have one class, we can create multiple objects we have. Okay. So the class is what? A physical entity. Sorry, class is a logical entity. It is just a name which we have given to the group of elements or group of objects. In other words, we can say the group of objects are called as a class. A group of objects also called as a class. A class is a virtual entity, whereas objects are physical entities. Objects derived from the class. Without class, there is no object. So without class, there is no object. So all objects are derived from the class, and one class can have multiple objects. This is the connection between class and object. Okay. Class is a category. It's just a name which we have given to the group. And whatever is there in that group, they all comes under objects, and they are physical in nature. Okay. So let me put all the definition here. So we will try to understand both what is class, what is an object, and what is a difference. So how can we define object? Object is an instance of a class. Of a class. An object is an instance of a class. Now, let us discuss the differences between class and object. First, class. The first point. As I said before, class is a collection of attributes and behavior. This is a generic definition. A generic definition in the sense commonly applied everywhere. Class is a collection of attributes and behavior. So in Java perspective, attributes are called variables. Behavior is called methods. Okay, attributes in the sense variables. Behavior means what? Methods in Java. So as per Java, the class is collection of variables and methods. What does it mean? When I create a new class in Java, which contains what? Just variables and methods. So we can create a multiple variables, we can create a multiple methods, we can create a single variable, we can create a single method. So basically the class is a collection of variables and methods. The class contains the variables and methods, nothing else. That is the definition. So when you create a class, we should have some variables and we should have some methods. Now the second point, class is logical entity. So logical entity means what? logical entity or is a blueprint. Means it is a virtual. It is not a visible. It is a virtual means it is a not a visible. It is a virtual. That's the reason it's a logical entity. So whenever I say it is a virtual logical entity invisible, obviously it will not occupy any space in the memory, right? So it is not a physical. Whenever it is a physical, then only it will occupy a certain amount of space in the memory. If it is not a physical, it cannot occupy any space in the memory. So class is a logical or entity. If it's not physical entity, it's a logical entity. So it will not occupy space in the memory. It will not occupy any space in the memory. So these are the three important points which we have to remember. Class is a collection of variables and methods. When you create a class, it should have some variables and methods. It is just a logical entity or blueprint. Means it is not a physical entity, it is a purely logical entity. And so it is not occupying any space in the memory because it is not physical. So how to create a class in Java? By using class keyword, we have to create by using class keyword. This is syntax. Class and space, we have to provide some name of the class. Let's say my class name is what? Employee. So after creating this class, open bracket and close bracket, and inside this block, we can create variables and methods. What is this class contains? Multiple variables we can create, multiple methods also we can create. I will explain what is method later. For now, just follow this one. Okay, class employee, which contains the variables and which contains the methods. So far we are writing main method, right? So the main is also one of the method. So along with the main method, we can also create multiple methods. So basically the class contains the variables and also class contains the methods. This is the syntax, how to create a class, right? Now, what is an object? So we have understood what is a class. Class is a collection of variables and methods. It is a logical entity or blueprint. It will not occupy any space in the memory. Why it is not occupying space? Because it's just logical. There is no physical, right? So object, purely logical entity. So it will not occupy any space in the memory. So this is a syntax, how to create a new class. Now come to the object. So what is an object? So we can create an object only if we have a class. Okay, so without creation of class, we cannot create an object directly because the object is derived from the class itself. So we can say an object is an instance of a class. Okay. In other words, we can say object will be created by using a class. Okay. Object will be created by using class. So first we have to create a class, then we can create an object of this class. So objects are always derived from the class. We can create n number of objects for one class. So object is an instance of a class. And one more thing is object is a physical entity. Object is a physical entity. Object is physical entity. So class is a logical entity. By using a class, we can create an objects. So objects are physical. So whenever I say objects are physical, definitely they will occupy certain amount of memory. So occupy memory. Okay, or you can say occupy space in a memory. So definitely, because these are the physical, definitely they'll occupy certain amount of space in the memory. And one more thing is we can create n number of objects for single class. We can create multiple objects for single class. So this is all about object. But how to create an object for the class? If you want to create an object for the class, we have to take the class name and then variable name. Employee, let's say. So normally how to create an object? By using new keyword, we have to create an object. So new, then class name, employee, and then bracket. So this will create an object actually. New employee. This simple statement will create an object. So, but once you created this object, how can we refer that object? We need some variable. So as soon as you say new employee, this will create a new object. And how we can refer this object? We need some variable. We need some variable. So that variable we can create. So how to create that variable is just specifying the some variable. It's a emp equal to. Now, what is the type of this variable? Obviously, it is an employee type of variable because the class name is employee. So the variable also should be employee type. So then only this will able to hold the object of employee. Okay. So this is a syntax of creating an object. Class name, variable name equal to new. This is basically called as constructor. In the next session, I will explain what is constructor. So this is a class name followed by bracket. So this is a syntax of creating an object. So you can create any number of objects. Let's say emp1 is one object. Now I want to create another object. You can say employee emp2 equal to new employee. Similarly, I can create another object, employee3 equal to new employee. So like this, you can create a number of objects for single class. For single class, we can create a number of objects. Okay. So object is an instance of a class, or object will be created by using a class, and it is a physical entity. It will occupy certain amount of space in the memory because it is an object. We can create n number of objects for a single class. But when you create an object, what will happen? What is the use of an object? Why we need to create an object for the class? So let us try to understand this concept. For example, we created some class. Let's say this is my employee class. Okay, this is my employee class. So what is class contains? Class contains variables and methods. As per the definition, class contains variables and methods. So let us create some variables here. Let's say integer employee ID, integer employee name, integer employee salary. Like this, I can create multiple variables. Now, apart from this variable, I will also create one method which will display employee data. Okay, which will, when I call this display method, this will print employee data, all the details. So this is a class creation. So once you created a class, we can create multiple objects. So let's create one object here. Let's say emp1 and another object, emp2, another object, emp3. Like this, we can create a number of objects. But when I create an object, what is the use of this object? So whenever you create an object, the object will acquire their own copy of variables and methods from the class. That means the class contains these three variables and method, right? So even emp1 object is also having same variable, emp ID, ename, and salary, and then display method. Same emp2 also acquire their own copy of variables and methods. Here also emp ID, emp name, salary, and then display method. Same emp3 also acquire their own copy of variables and method. Again, emp ID, emp name, emp salary, and then display method. So whenever you create an object, that will acquire their own copy of variables and methods from the class itself. Okay. And we cannot directly work with the class variables and methods. Only through object, we can access all the variables and methods. So once you created a first step, we have to create a class. Second step, we create an objects. And once you created an object, the object will acquire their own copy of variables and methods from the class itself. It is derived from the class itself. Class is the base for the object. Okay. Once you created an object, the values of variables can be different, right? Variables are same for every object, but employee ID of emp1 can be different of employee ID of emp2, employee ID of emp3, right? Every employee won't have same emp ID, right? The data can be different. So here employee ID can be 101, here employee ID can be 102, here employee ID can be 103. That means every object is representing one employee, like that. So similarly, employee name can be different here, X, Y, and here it is Z. Employee name can be different. Maybe sometimes the values can be same, no problem. But every object is independent. There's no connection between these objects, even though they have derived from the same class. Listen this very, very carefully, most important. Once you created your class, you can create multiple objects based on the class. And every object will acquire their own copy of variables and methods from the class. Even though they have derived from the same class, they are independent. There is no connection between these objects. EMP1 is different. EMP data and methods are different. EMP2 data and methods are different. EMP3 data and methods are different. And they created based on the same class, but they are independent. Why they are independent? Because this object will occupy different space in the memory. Somewhere else it will store. This object will store somewhere else because these are physical. Physical means they will occupy certain amount of space in the memory. So this object will store somewhere else. So there is no connection between these objects. All are different, even though they have created from the same class. So what is an object contains? Object contains the variables and methods. And we don't initiate the data in the class. Suppose if you put employee ID 101 in the class itself, then what will happen? When you create an object, every object employee ID becomes 101. It doesn't make any sense, right? So when you put the data directly in the variable, in the class itself, if you specify the data, then what happens when you create an object, objects also will acquire the variables, right? So when I acquire the variables, the data will be same, 101, 10, 101. So it will be the same. That is the reason most of the times we don't assign data to the variables in the class. Just we create a variables and method. And once we created an object, inside the object, we can change the values. We can add values to the variables and we can implement this method also. So the variable values can be different from one object to another object. The method implementation also can be different from one object to another object. But they are created based upon same class. And class is a logical entity, whereas objects are physical entities. Now we will directly work with the objects, not with the class. We will just create a class, but we won't directly work with the class. Once you created an object, we will work on these objects because they are physical. We will operate objects. We will do calculations based on objects, not based on the class. Okay. So how to access these variables and how to access this method? Only through object. emp1.eid, emp1.ename, emp1.esal, emp1.display. Like this, we will able to access. Similarly, if you are able to access the variables and method from the emp2 object, we say emp2.empid, emp2.ename, emp2.salary, emp2.display, like this. So by using dot, we will able to access everything from the object. Similarly, if you want to access everything from emp3 object, you can say emp3.eid, emp3.ename, emp3.salary, emp3.display, like this we can access. So by using this object reference variable, we can access everything from this objects. Objects are independent. We will operate these objects differently because they will store in different places in the memory. Okay. So this is basic understanding. What is a class? What is an object? So far, everything is clear. Theoretical understanding. First, we need to have theoretical understanding. Then I will show you practical implementation. First, how to create a class. I will show you how to create a variables and method that we will see. Once you create a class, we will try to create multiple objects. Once you created an object, we will see how can pass the data to the variables and how can we call this method, how to operate these objects. Okay, everything I'll show you practically. First, we need to have some theoretical understanding. What is a class? What is an object? What is the difference between class and object? Okay, this is the fundamental, the basic stuff for all other object-oriented programming concepts. Now, let us move to the practical implementation. So go back to Eclipse and create new package for today, day 10. Okay, so inside this, First step, I will create a new class, directly take a new class. No, we should not say class is a parent. So the meaning will change actually. So parent and child relationship is totally different. In inheritance, we will discuss that part, but we should not say class is a parent of all the objects. We can say objects are derived from the class. Objects are instance of a class. Or we can say a class is a group of objects. That's the right definition. Class is a group of objects, or object is an instance of a class. That's not a parent and child relationship actually. Okay. So now let us create one simple class. I'll name it as employee. Okay, employee class I'm creating. And one more thing, sometimes we will have main method in the class. Sometimes you may not have main method. We can also create a classes without main method. Okay, I will show you all the combinations. First of all, let me take main method as usual. So main method should be there if you want to run the class. So this is the main method. So far we are using this main method every time whenever you create a class. By default, the main method should be there. So let us keep this main method. We will try to use this later. I'm not using this main method for now. What we have understood here is a class is a collection of variables and methods, right? Class is a collection of variables and method. So we created one class, and also we have one default method, that is a main method. Apart from this main method, I will also try to create some more variables, some more methods, some other variables, some other methods I will get. This is one method. So let's keep this one side. Now I will create some variables here. So int, okay, so this is employee class. So I can store employee type of data. So how to create a variables? Int employee ID. I'm not assigning the data, just create a variable. We don't normally assign the data in the class. Okay, because if you assign the data here, the values will be the same for every object. So it should not happen like this. Then I'll take one more variable to store employee name. I can say emp name, ename. And I can take another variable called job. And I'll take another variable called salary. So 4 variables I have declared. For every employee is having employee ID, name, job, and salary. But the values can be different. One employee to another employee, the values can be different. One object to another object, the value can be different. But the variables are same, right? Every employee object is having employee ID, every employee is having name, every employee is having job, every employee having salary. These are called attributes basically. So these are almost same, but the values of variables or the values of attributes can be different from one object to another object. That is the reason we will assign the data only through object, not directly in the class. Okay, so these are the variables which we have created. So as per the definition, class contains the variables and methods. So I just created some variables. Now let us create some methods. So main is a one method. This is also a method. Similarly, we will create some more methods. So probably in the next class, I will give detailed information about method, what is method, how to create, how to pass parameter, how to return the result from the methods. So we will discuss in detail. The methods itself will take one session, but here just try to understand with it very high level. So I'm going to create one more additional method along with the main method. Let's say the method name is a display, no parameters. Empty bracket means no parameters. And here I will just try to print the values of this variable. That means just I want to print the data of employee data I want to print. So I can simply say one print statement. Here I'm going to print EID. And similarly, I will try to print ename. And then I will try to print, this is user defined method. We are creating our own method. Okay, we are creating our own method. Yesterday, whatever we discussed, string methods, they are already created. We are just calling those methods. But here we are creating our own method. Okay, job. And then what else? Sal. So salary. So now I have created one more method here. Display. The method name is display. You can provide any name to method. Name is user defined. You can provide any name. And this is called normal method. And whenever you create a method, you have to specify something called return type. Sometimes method may return some value or may not return value. Return means it's the output. When you call this method, it will return some value. Sometimes it may not return any value. Okay, let me give you one example. Yesterday, we have seen last classes, we have seen some string related methods, right? So for example, if I take one string like this, welcome, I want to find length of a string. How to find length of a string? Yes, dot. I'm calling length method like this. When you call this method, it is returning length of a string. So that returned value we are storing into some other variable, or we are directly printing the length. So when I call this method, it is returning some value. This is output it will return. Similarly, sometimes method returns some value, sometimes it may not return any value. Sometimes it may not return. So if a method return a value, we have to specify what type of value it is returning. Suppose if it is a returning integer, before this method, we have to specify integer. If this method is a returning string, we have to specify return type as a string. If this method is returning nothing, we simply say void. Okay, sometimes it may not return anything. It is just print the output. That's it. It is not returning any output for us. In those cases, we can simply say void is a return type. And empty bracket is representing there are no parameters. When you call this method, you don't need to pass any input to this method. So no input, no output from this method. It just prints something on the console window. That's it. So for now, just understand only this much. Next session, I will explain in detail about methods. Okay. So don't ask anything about this for now. You can't understand. So in the next session, I will make you understand better. Okay. Void is nothing but a no return value. That's the meaning of void. If I don't specify return type, it will give you an error. As per Java, whenever you create a method, you have to specify the return type. Okay. Return type you have to specify. So if the method is not returning anything, for example, then you have to at least specify void. Void means nothing, no return value. Okay, that is a representation. So we have to specify the void keyword. Why we are not declaring variables and methods inside the main method? Inside the main method, we should not specify the methods. A method doesn't have any another method. We cannot create a method inside another method. We can just create a variables inside this method. I'll show you that. Hold on. Still, we have not completed. So try to have a basic understanding. I'll answer all the questions, but it should be step by step. Otherwise, you will be confused. This is a little complicated concept, especially for beginners. Definitely, they will confuse. So try to understand step by step. So don't directly jump into the complex things. I will make you understand everything. Just to follow me. So we created some variables in the class. Along with the variables, I created one method and main method is also there. So how many methods are there in the class now as of now? How many methods are there in the class currently? 2 methods. One is a display method, other one is main method. So if you look at this, there is a difference in this. If I look at here, display is the name of the method. Here main is the name of the method. Here it is not taking any parameters, but this main method is taking some parameters. And here this display method not returning any value. Same thing, main method is also not returning any value. But in addition, we have a public and static. These are called access modifier. Public is an access modifier. Static is having a different meaning. But this method is not a public, not a static method. So these keywords are not mandatory to specify. But the return type you must specify for the method. So I have just created a normal method. It's not a static method, not a public method. It's just a normal method. Okay. So display is one method. Main is another method. Now currently this employee class is having variables and methods. So always we have to treat main method different. It's a special type of a method. We should not compare this main method with the normal methods. Why? Because if you create a main method, then only you can execute this class. If you don't have a main method, you cannot execute this class. Execution is always start from the main method. Java is always look for the main method in the class before execution. So that is the reason you have to create a main method in the class if you want to execute this class. If you create a normal method, you cannot execute the class. Main method should be there. And not only that, whenever you create an objects for this class, the objects should be created within the main method. We cannot create an objects anywhere else, only in the main method. Wherever you are starting execution, there itself we can create multiple objects. So objects can be also created only in the main method. And remember this, the hierarchy is most important. The class contains what? Variables and methods. Variables and methods. What is method contains? What is method contains? Inside the method, we can access the class variables or we can create our own variables inside the method. But method should not have another method. We cannot write like this. Okay, for example, when I create one display method like this is the one method. Inside this method, I cannot create another method like this. Again, create one void, okay, void print like this. We cannot create another method within the method. So this is another method. We cannot do like this. Okay, one method should not have another method. Only method contains the variables. That's it. That is the reason. If you look at here, the class contains the variables. The class contains the two methods. And this display method, we should not write in the main method. Okay. Why? Because the method should not have another method. Methods are different. But class contains a multiple methods. So class contains a display method, class contains a main method. But this display method should not write in the main method. Got my point? And you can create variables in the method. So these are class variables. And if you create some variables inside this display method, we can call them as a local variables. Those variables we can access only in the display method. Similarly, we can create some variables in the main method also. And those variables are local to main method. But whatever variables we created here, these are the class variables. Means we can access these variables everywhere. In every method, we can access. Okay, that is the difference. Now, when you create a class, contains the variables and methods. Now, what is the next step? We created a new class. Okay, once you created a class, what is the next step? Objects we have to create, right? When you create a class, only class, there is no use until unless we create an object. Until unless we create an object, there is no use of class. Just is a blueprint. So now we created a class. This is our class, employee class. For this class, we have to create multiple objects and we will do operations on these objects. We will operate these objects. We will work with these objects, not with the class. But when you create an object, before that, we have to create a class. So now we created an employee class, which contains some variables, which contains some methods. But now we have to create an object. And how to create an object? Where we have to create an object. So every time we have to create an object only within the main method. Remember this point. Okay. Objects can be created only within the main method. We cannot create anywhere else. We cannot create an object inside the normal method. So if you want to create an objects of employee, those objects should be part of main method. This is a thumb rule. Okay. Now let's come back to the main method. Now how to create an object for the employee class. So employee emp1 equal to new employee. This is how we need to create an object. This is a object. Okay. So now once you created emp1 object for the class, then what will happen? So this is our employee class. And for this class, we created one object called emp1. Then what will happen? So whatever variables we created here, whatever methods we created, main method, forget about. Okay, main method is not applicable. Whatever variables and methods we created in a class, same variables or methods are also will be there in the emp1 object, because this is just a physical form of employee. So this employee 1 is also having same variables. emp1 is having same methods. Okay, now emp1 is an object we created. What is this emp1 is having now? emp1 is having the variables and methods which we are created from the class, right? So it is getting their own copy. They're getting their own copy of variables and methods. So now the EMP1 object is having variables and methods. So what are the variables this EMP1 is having now? Employee ID is one variable. Employee name is another variable. Job is another variable. Salary is another variable. And what are the methods EMP1 is having? What are the methods EMP1 is having? Display method. So main method we should not consider because there's a main method. Execution start from there everywhere. So now the currently EMP1 object is having 4 variables and 1 method. Okay, now we will try to operate EMP1 object. So what we can do now is by taking this EMP1, we can assign the data to the variables. Currently, these are just the variables. There is no data in the variables, right? So now we need to assign some data to the variables. How to assign the data to the variables? EMP1 dot. See here, you're able to get all the variables here, automatically populated. So let's take EMP ID. So employee 1 EMP ID is 101. Similarly, EMP1 dot ename John. I can assign data the object level. EMP1 dot job manager. Then EMP1 dot salary some value. So like this, we can assign the data into the variables of that particular object. Now, this is all about data of EMP1 object. Okay. Now, we assign some data to the variables. Now, if you want to print the data, I want to know the details of employee 1. Then what we can do, we can simply call the display method. So display method is already implemented as part of the class, right? We are able to print all the data. So the same display method is present inside this object. Same display method is present inside the EMP1 object. So once you assign the data, now when you call this EMP1 dot display, then what happens? This particular method will print the data of EMP1 object. Okay. Now when I execute this, observe very carefully. When I execute this, this will print the data of EMP1 object. So who is printing this data? The display method is printing the data. So before calling the display method, what we have done, we have assigned the data to the objects. We have accessed all the variables from the object and we have assigned some data to the variables. Then we call display method. So it is got displayed the data. So this is how we can create a new class. A class contains the variables and methods. And once you created an object of the employee class, through the object, we can access all the variables and assign the data, and then we can print the data of EMP1 object. Similarly, let me create another object. So now I'm going to create another object of same employee class, EMP2, new employee. This is another object. For the same class, it is another object, employee, EMP2 equal to new employee. And at the time of creating an object, you should not use same names here. EMP1 should not be repeated here. EMP1 should not be repeated here. Guys, is my voice clear, everyone? Okay. So this is the second object. Okay. Once you create a second object, what will happen? It will create another object. So 2 objects. We have an employee class. For this employee class, first we created a EMP1 object and we have assigned the data. We call that method. This is over. Now I'm going to create another object, EMP2. So when you create an EMP2 object, then what happens? It is also acquire their own copy of variables and methods from the EMP class. So whatever variables we created employee class, EMP2 is also having their own variables, EID, ename, salary, job, and then display method. So now we want to assign the data in the EMP2 object. So how to assign the data into the EMP2 object? How to access the variables from the EMP2 object? How to access? By using dot. So EMP2 dot EID. So currently it doesn't have any value. We need to assign some data. So 102. EMP2 dot ename. Ename. Okay. And then EMP2 dot job then emp2 dot salary. Then we have assigned some data now. So once we assign the data, what is the next thing? We should able to print the data of emp2. How to print the data of emp2? We just call display method from emp2 object. So emp2 dot display. So this will print the data of emp2. So now when I execute this, run as Java application, see, this is the data of emp1. This is the data of emp2. Okay. So this is how we can create object and we can assign the data in the object variables. We can call the method from the object. So like this, you can create n number of objects for the same class. So now you got some basic idea about the class and the object. Everyone, please confirm in the chat window. Okay. Suppose if we don't have this display method, okay, so I have assigned some data to the variables, but I don't have this display method. For example, I have not created this display method in the class. So obviously objects also doesn't have the display method. Objects are having only variables. So I have assigned some data to the variables. Then if you want to print the data of the variables without a display method, is it possible or not? Yes, it is possible. So how it is possible? We directly print here. Instead of calling the display method, here we have to write a print statement, system.out.println. So we have assigned some data to the emp1.eid. Now, if you want to print it, what you can do? You can just put that variable directly here, emp1.eid. Similarly, I can write multiple print statements to print multiple variables, emp1.eid, emp1.ename, emp1.job, emp1.salary. You can write multiple print statements. Okay. You can, while adding the data or while assigning the data, you can access the variables by using object. Similarly, at the time of printing also, we can access the variables by using object if you do not have a display method. That is the reason. Instead of writing multiple print statements for every object, we just created one user-defined method and just we call that particular method. This will print all the data from that particular object. Okay. So without this display method also, we can access the variables, but we have to create our own print statements. Okay. So that's not recommended. So this always try to create one user-defined method because that's a common for across multiple objects. Right. So now you guys understood what is a class, what is an object, how to create a class, how to create an object. And once you created an object, how to access the variables and how to call that method from that object. So this is the basic fundamental understanding. Okay. And remember one thing, objects are different. So emp1 object is different, emp2 is different. So if you want to access the data from emp1 object, we have to use emp1 dot. If you want to access emp2 data, we have to use emp2 dot. Okay. Both are totally different type of objects. Type is same. Objects are derived from the same class, but physically they are different. Okay. So now let me tell you something else. So we created a one class. Class contains the variables and also methods. So sometimes we should not create main method in the same class. We will create a separate class where we will maintain the main method. Okay. So without creating main method also, we can create a class. Without having main method also, we can create a class, plain class, but which we cannot execute, but we can reuse the class in multiple places. So let me tell you scenario here. Without main method, if I create a class, why we need to create? So normally in the real time, what will happen is, if I look at real time projects, normally, there are n number of modules, main modules, sub modules that divide entire project into different modules. So every module is having different classes. You can create n number of classes or n number of modules in your project, but this is all one single project. For one single project, always we will have only one main class which contains a main method. Okay. And from this, we will operate all the classes. So these are all just the plain classes which are having variables and normal methods. So wherever we create a main class, wherever you have a main method, that is called main class. Whichever class includes this main method, that is a main class. So if you want to run this whole project, we will start from this main class. In this main class, we will create an objects of all these classes. And all these objects we will control, all these classes we will control from main class. Every class we should not have main method. In the real scenario, every class we should not create a main method. So for an entire project, there will be one single class contains a main method, and rest of all classes are just a plain classes. They don't have a main methods because we don't run individual classes. We will run the whole project as one single entity. So execution should start from one single place. That is main class. Why we are calling main class? Because this class only contains a main method. And from this main method, we will operate all other classes. So always we will create one main class contains a main method, and all other classes objects we will create inside the main method. That means normal classes will be different and main class will be different. The main class contains the main method. Only one single main method we should maintain throughout entire project. But how to operate these classes? From this main method, we will able to access all the classes because all of them belongs to same project. So we will able to access all the classes. We are able to create an objects in the main class. Then we will able to operate. So the main method will separate in another class. And all other classes are one side. Main class is another side. The main class contains a main method. But currently what we have done in our current example is we have included the main method also in the same class. So in the same class, along with the variables and method, we also included a main method, so that we are able to execute this class directly. If I run as a Java application, we are able to execute the main class, main employee class. But normally in the real scenario, we don't put main method for every class. There will be only one class which contains the main method. So now I'll show you. If you separate this main method in another class, another main class, then how can we operate? See this. Let us assume I commented this. I will comment this main class, sorry, main method in this class. So now assume you don't have anything. You don't have a main method in this class. It is just having variables and just having one method. That's it. It doesn't have a main method. I just commented. Can you run this class now? No. You will not get the run option here. Okay, because the main method is not present in this. This is just a plain class. Now, if you want to use this class, if you want to operate this class, we will operate from the actual main class. Okay, what I'm doing is, let's say this is a plain class now. Okay, employee is a main normal class. Now I will create my main class. Here I will create a main method. Inside this main method, I will create an objects of employee class, and then I will operate here. Similarly, tomorrow if you create another class called student, and this class also I can create an object here, and then I can operate student. Okay. Similarly, you can create n number of classes, and for all those classes, you can create an objects in the main method, and you can operate those classes. But main method should be only one for entire project. So same thing I'm trying to simulate here. So I have one method called employee. This is the normal class, not a main class. Why? Because I have just disabled this main method, commented this main method. It doesn't have a main method. Now I have some variables and some method. So how to create a main class? So let's go and create another class. I will name it as employee main. And this class should have a main method. Okay, so I'm just taking main method and say finish. Okay, just observe. This is the normal class and this is the main class. The normal class contains variables and method, and main class contains a main method. So main class always having only one single main method, nothing else. Because objects will be organized only through main method from the main class. Okay. So now employee class is there, already class is present. Now can we create an object here? Yes, we can easily create. Just try to copy the same code here. That's it. See, we are able to create an object for employee class. We are able to assign the data and printing the data. Same thing, we are creating another object, assigning the data and printing the data. So this task we can do in a separate class. So main method is created in the same class. In the first example, now I have separated main method in separate class, another class. Now which class we can run it? Which class we can run? Employee or employee main? Which one we have to run? Which one we have to execute? Employee main class we can execute. Because in employee main only we are able to create an object of that employee class and we are able to operate. Now when you run this employee main class, you will get the result like this. Got my point? So you can create a main method in the same class, or you can create a main method in another class where exactly you can create objects and you can operate. So this is the approach we normally follow in our real-time projects. We don't write main method in every class. Okay. And one more thing. So in the employee main class, we are able to access another class, right? How it is possible? Currently, they are in same package. The day one means the same folder. So we are able to access this employee. We are able to access here. But suppose sometimes these two classes are present in two different packages. So employee is there in some other package. Employee main is there in some other package. Then is it possible to access? Yes, still it is able to access. The only thing is you have to import that particular package. So you have to write some import statement. Import, and in which package this class is present. Suppose employee is present in some other package, not in day 10. Okay, some other package. Then you have to specify that package name. Okay, that package name you have to specify. Dot, even class name also you have to specify. Class name also you have to specify and then semicolon. So if you are trying to access these classes from external package other than same package, then you have to write this import statement separately. Okay. Otherwise, if both are belongs to same package, then this statement is not needed. Import is not required. Until unless all the files are belongs to same project, you are able to access from anywhere. From any package you can access. Okay. So this is a simple example. We can create main method in the same class. We can separate main method in another class. And this is the approach most of the time we follow. So we can create any number of classes in our project, but all the classes we will control or we will organize from one main class, and which should contain a main method. So now you understood, everyone. Please confirm in the chat window. Everyone is understood so far how to create a class, how to create an objects. And main method is there in the same class, and we have separated main method in another class. I will show you another example. So this is one example. Same thing, I'll show you another example. Okay, fine. So now let us see one more example. We just understood some basic concept. There are so many things are there still, okay? It takes 2 to 3 sessions to understand the complete whole picture. So we will go step by step. So now I'm going to create another class. I'll name it as a student class. I'm not taking main method. This is a simple, just a class, student class. Now in this, what is the class contains? If all classes are under same project, so we don't have to import the class, right? I'm not talking about project. I'm talking about packages. See guys, you need to understand the project structure. See, the high level entity is what? Project. This is the one. This is the project. Okay. The project contains a multiple packages. Pack 1, pack 2, pack 3, and then every package contains a multiple classes. This is a hierarchy. Okay, this is every package contains a classes. So these classes are belongs to same package. So you can access here internally, you can access everything. One class, another class. Suppose in this class, I want to access this one. So in this pack2 class, I want to access pack1 class. Then here you have to import pack1 dot c1. You have to specify the statement inside this class. Then only can access this external class from pack1 into pack2. Here the import statement work. And all packages inside the packages classes, everything belongs to one single project. Same project. Okay, but when import is required, if you're trying to access the class from a different package, not different project. Okay, I'm talking about package levels, not project level. All packages are belongs to same project. But when we have to import, if you're trying to access class from another package, okay, then import is required. Munir, have understood this? See, pack1 contains a C1, pack2 contains a C2. Now I want to access C1 into C2. Now what we need to do in the C2, we have to specify import. Okay, but C1 is present in the same pack2. Then you don't need to import. Okay, you don't need to import because C1 is also part of pack2. But if the C1 is part of pack1, if you're trying to use in pack2, then you have to import pack1.c1 into C2. Anyway, we will have a separate session for this packages concept. Then you will get more clarity on this. Okay, access modifiers, packages, we have a separate concept for this. So do the share classes or methods between projects? No, projects are independent. You don't club the multiple projects into single. Project is totally different. You should not combine. Okay. So within the project, you can do whatever you want because you will always work on one single project at a time. You don't want to assign multiple projects in real time, right? You don't work multiple projects at the same time. One project you will be assigned, and within the project, you will have the full-fledged access. You can do whatever you want. Right. So let me show you one more example for class and object. So here I'm creating one new class called student. And what is a class contains? Class contains the variables and methods. Now I'm going to create some variables and methods in this class. So to store student ID, I'm creating one variable SID. And to store name, I'm creating one more method, string yes name. And I create one more method char. To store grade of a student, I create one more variable. So 3 variables I created, SID, SName, and grade. Now to print these values, I can create another method called void print. The name of the method is user defined. You can give any name to this method. I can say print data. Okay, and return type is void because this method won't return anything. You just print the data. Now I want to print the data of the student. Can we write one single statement to print all this data instead of writing multiple print statements for multiple variables? It's a very difficult thing, right? So we can write single statement. Yes. So let me write single statement. First, I'm printing SID. Okay. So after SID, I'll give some space, concatenated with some space. And again, concatenate with SName. Again, concatenated with some space. And then concatenate with the grade. So like this, we can write one single statement to print all the student data. Now this is my class, which contains 3 variables, 1 method. Okay. Now I'll create another class, main student class. Create a new class. I will name it as student main. And here we should take a main method. So if you want to see both the windows at the same time, you can put the cursor, you can just click on this tab and drag it down. Okay, you will see 2 windows, multiple windows. Okay. So just observe this. So inheritance still we haven't discussed. Don't go beyond the concept, please. Okay, next sessions I will talk about inheritance and all. So just stick to the concept currently which we are discussing. Don't go beyond that. All right. So this is your student class and this is our student main class. So can we access the student class directly in the main method? Can we create an object of the student class? Yes or no? Yes, we can create. Now let us try to create a student stu1 equal to new student. So now I created one object of student class stu. Okay, now I want to assign the data to this object. How to assign the data? How to access the student data? Now, whenever I say stu1, which is got created one new object. So student is a class. For this class, we created one object called student1. And this class contains what? SID, SName, grade. Along with there is a print data method. So now we have these things in the student1. How to access these things? By using student1.SID, student1.grade, student1.print data. So let us try to access it. So stu1.SID equal to 101. stu1.sname. Let's give some name, Smith. stu1 dot what else? Grade is a character type, so we should put in the single quotations. Grade is A. So now I have filled data into the variables. Now I want to print the data of the student one. How to print? stu1 dot print data and just call that method. So this particular method will print the data of student one. Let's try to execute main class. So you will see the data here. Okay. So similarly, can we create another object? Yes, we can create another object. This is one object. Let's copy this and another object. So let's call it as a student 2. Now this is a student 2 of SID, student 2 of SNAME, student 2 of grade, student of. And can we have some common data between multiple objects? Suppose here student 1 name is Smith. Can we have same name here? Yes, we can have, no problem, because there is a possibility, right? So both the students have same name, possibility is there. So we can also have same data, no problem, because until unless the objects are different, they are physically different. So we can have common data also sometimes, no problem. Okay, so I can make it as a 102 instead of Smith. You can say John, grade is A, and then print data. So now I create another object, student 2. Then I'm trying to print the data. So this is the data of student 1. This is the data of the student 2. So like this, we can create class and we can create objects in another main class. Okay. So if you want to see what are all variables you created in the class through the object, the only way is you can simply say like this, stu.1. So when I say dot here, it will pop up automatically. It will show you all the variables. So whichever variable you want, you can access it. Okay. So this is the way we can operate classes and objects. Is it possible to set some data to be unique? Yes, it is possible. Yes, it is possible. And if there is a common data between multiple objects, sometimes instead of assigning the data in multiple objects, it will be duplicated, right? Suppose, let us assume the name is same for every student. So every object we have to go and assign the data. Instead of doing it, you can directly assign the data here. Okay, SNAME equal to, for example, same is name is same for both objects. Then here you can directly assign Smith. Okay, in that case, you no need to assign here. Here you no need to assign the name. So then what happens? This value will be the same for all the objects. In tomorrow, whatever objects you created for the student class, for all the objects, the name is same. SNAME is same. when you assign the data here. Okay, just observe when I run it as a Java application. See, the name is same for both objects. I have not assigned the data here at the object level, commented the statement, but still we are getting Smith. How it is getting like this? Because at the class level itself, we have directly assigned the data. So once you assign the data in the class level, that is common across all the objects. Okay, understood. So if any data is a unique for multiple objects, you can specify that in the class. Directly you can specify that in the class. This is one approach, but there is another approach. Suppose I have 10 objects, only 3 to 4 objects, the data is same, but rest of them are not same. In that case, what you will do, you have to assign the data only through object. You should not specify data in the class. This is not recommended actually. So this is not recommended. This is not recommended. When it is recommended, if all the objects having same data, in future, you don't have a plan to change any data. For example, if you have created 100, for example, let's take employee class. In employee class, let us say I have suppose DPT number, department number, yeah, school name, for example, yes. So school name is same. In those cases, you can directly assign the school name at the class level. That's it. You no need to add the data for every object. Okay, so like this, you can operate. If there is any common data across multiple objects, every time that is same, all objects, the data is belongs, then you can directly create another variable, assign the data directly into the class itself. So in those cases, we no need to assign the data at the object level. So that value will be the same for all objects. Okay, everyone understood? Please put in the chat window. So this is a concept of class and object, the basic concepts. Still, it is not completed actually. I don't want to go beyond this for today. You will be confused. So just practice this much for today and be familiar with this. Okay, and from the next class, I will introduce you multiple things. We will see so many other things are missing here. Okay, I will try to explain them in the next 1 or 2 sessions. This is the first basic things you need to practice first. And once you understand this, then I can go beyond that, because the next, all the topics, whatever we are going to discuss, it depends on this. If you're not understood this, you can't understand the further concepts. So I will give enough time to understand these things, do practice, and the rest of the things we will continue in the next sessions. Okay. Fine. So I will stop here for today's session. If you have any questions on this, you guys can ask.